Welcome to the Tuesday live stream, everyone here inside the Gut Solution. I am Maro Salerno, the Gutsy Health Coach, and I'm so happy that you are all here with me today because I know so many of you are struggling with autoimmune diseases, or maybe you have autoimmune diseases and you don't even know. And so I want to share the big secret with you guys today, and that is the role that the gut plays in autoimmune diseases. Okay, that's the end of the live stream. Just kidding. Okay, but that is the big kahuna that we're going to talk about today. Hi, Faye. Glad you're joining me here today. And for whoever else comes on, if you pop on, please say hello. And let me know what chronic digestive condition you're struggling with and how long you've been struggling with it for. I do like to know because it helps me help you. But again, for those of you who don't know me, I am Maro Salerno. I am a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and I help people overcome their chronic digestive conditions so they can live freely without pain or dread of the toilet. Who wouldn't want that? And I do it using functional medicine, my own approach, and holistic and natural methods. So I welcome all of you new and those of you who are more seasoned here in the group. And a quick housekeeping note to all of you, which is that an easy way to find all of the content here in the group is to go to the guides tab at the top of the group. So if you scroll up, there's going to be a few tabs there. One of them says guides. And you click on that one, and I organize all of the video content for you guys in there, as well as any resources. So that's a really great place to go. If you're new to the group, it's an easy way to find everything. At least for me, I prefer it than scrolling, and it makes me dizzy. So I like going there. So I encourage you to go there because I want you to get value out of this group and be able to utilize the content, consume the content, get educated, get empowered so that you can make really great positive choices to move in the right direction so you can overcome your chronic digestive conditions and reclaim optimal health. Yeah? Okay. Hey, Linda. Welcome. Yes. No fun. Chronic digestive conditions are absolutely no fun. Okay, so again, today we're going to be talking about how the gut is really the root of autoimmune diseases. And I see some of you posting in the group about how you've had tests done at your conventional doc, and you've been tested for celiacs and this and that, and everything's coming out normal, and you don't feel normal, right? So everything is not actually normal. So what gives? So I want to just kind of shed some light, do some background education, and then we can also talk about maybe some lab testing stuff, because this comes up quite a lot as I talk to all of you, that you feel like, you've done these tests, and why is everything coming out normal? So I'm going to touch on that. I'm going to write a note so that I don't forget, because there's always a lot to cover. Okay, so why do gut issues really lead to autoimmune disease? Well, the big reason is because the gut actually is the immune system powerhouse. It's where 80 to 90% our immune system is secreted in our gut. So for those of you who are on here, whether live or on the replay, did you know that? Give me a yes or a no and type that in the comments. Because I think for a lot of people, I know I didn't know that. I didn't know that the immune system was secreted in the gut. And that was a big wake-up call for me. I know not everyone is the same, but, I just seemed to do like all the right things. I thought I was eating organic food and, trying to detox and exercise, yoga and meditation. Right. Yeah. You didn't know that. It's like, and I would still I would have these times where it seemed like I was so easily susceptible to getting sick. And once I found functional medicine and worked on my chronic digestive conditions, which was constipation, gas, and bloating, it all really made sense, because the obvious weak link to me that I could notice always was my gut, my digestion, like after I ate food or not, or whatever, right? I wasn't ever pooping enough, etc. So pretty kind of mind-blowing, right? So that's really one of the biggest secrets, is that the reason the gut is really the root to autoimmune disease is because the immune system lives in your gut, right? So I want to just go through, for those of you who are live with me, have you had a chance to watch my Gut Health 101 video replay live stream from a few weeks back? And in there, I go through in depth the small intestine anatomy and basically talk about leaky gut, but I'm going to do a quick little teaching of that in here. Okay, yeah, not yet. I encourage you guys to please watch that live stream. Yeah, it's a big kahuna. It's very, very educational and enlightening. But I'm going to just do a quick little snippet of education for all of you. So let me share my screen here. Bear with me. And okay, good. I'm over there. All right, let's start this. Okay, so really quick, this is just basically a picture of our gastrointestinal tract. So here's the esophagus. You'd imagine our mouth is up here, right? And then we start going through our gastro tract, right? And one of the first places we have is the small intestine. So imagine it's a tube shape, right? And you can see that there are these little rivets on the small intestine. And if we were to take a knife and slice this tube in half, and then we could kind of roll it open, it would just be like one flat piece, right? And those little rivets would pop out like this. And these little rivets are called enterocytes. So here are the enterocytes. This is like if you cut that tube, in half and it's laid open. Here are those flower-like petals. And those enterocytes are basically single cell layers, right? It's a single cell layer that creates the tube of the small intestine. So it's not very thick. It's a single cell layer thick, okay? And what happens in the small intestine and in these enterocytes is how it's supposed to work is that here come our food particles, right? We just ate, we chewed, and now, enzymes and hydrochloric acid are going to start breaking down our food particles. And then imagine that these are small enough micronutrient sizes from the food. And they basically get small enough so that they can be synthesized through these enterocytes and these villi and microvilli, which are those finger-like projections that you see. And they basically absorb the nutrients, right? And then the small intestine is then able to basically then feed the cells of the body through that, right? And that's how it's supposed to work. And it's a barrier. So you see here how these are all together. These are called tight junctions, the areas in between each enterocyte. So they're glued together. That's what a tight junction does. It glues them together and keeps them together. And that's what we want, because that's how a healthy small intestine is supposed to function. So that's what we got, right? Now, what happens is that the mucosal barrier is supposed to work in two major ways when it's working properly. It literally provides a physical barrier between the environment and us, right? Because it's moving from the mouth all the way to the anus. So anything that comes in that we are supposed to absorb, we absorb. Anything that comes in that we're not supposed to absorb should be moving out, right? So it's a barrier, literally. The small intestine is a mucosal barrier. Now, the other way that it's supposed to function is that it's where 90% of nutrient absorption takes place and where breakdown occurs. That's why I was showing you, right? That's where your food comes in and it breaks down with enzymes and hydrochloric acid so that you can then take in those micronutrients, those proteins, those fats, and those carbohydrates and feed your body, right? Through those villi and microvilli and through the enterocytes. So let's visit this picture again. Okay, so now we see that there is that separation. And when we see this separation occurring, one of the things that's happening is that the tight junctions, right, have now separated. And the reason that that's happening is a multiple of reasons. So you're going to hear me, and many of you have probably already heard me talk about stressors, but there's all different kinds of stressors. So usually when we think of stress, everyone goes to the mental, emotional, spiritual factor, which is super important, but it's not the only factor. It's also biochemical, like the things that we're talking about here, and it's also biomechanical. So like body aches and pains, injuries in the body, misalignments, broken bones, those are biomechanical stressors. So when any of these types of stressors occur, so it could be pregnancy, it could be menopause, it could be pesticides, it could be medications, it could be pathogens that you've been exposed to, it can be someone died in your family, any of those types of stressors, when you have enough of them, and your body has already been taxed and it's not resilient and it's not getting what it needs, it starts breaking down these tight junctions. And when that happens, these food particles literally can start to float through. And that is not supposed to happen, right? Because I told you that's not how it's supposed to happen. It's supposed to be nice and glued together. Well, when that happens enough times, like let's say you love chicken breast, or you love a banana, or you love a broccoli, we're talking whole foods, okay? Not even processed foods, which you already know are not good for you, right? But even whole foods. Once you have this damage, they start floating through, and you like them, so you probably eat them pretty often, and they keep floating through and dropping through. Now, when they do that enough of the time, they're dropping through, and they're dropping through into the bloodstream. When that happens, the immune system is activated. The immune system is activated and goes, whoa, what's going on? There is an invader here. I need to fight this thing off. Well, it's not a pathogen, right? It's food. Well, the problem is that is what the immune system's supposed to do. It's supposed to fire off a response to something that's in the bloodstream that shouldn't be, and food should not be there, right? So what does it do? After multiple times of you eating this food and it gets triggered and sensitive enough, it starts tagging this food with an antibody. And so you'll often see on food sensitivities tests, you'll see antibody names that are like IgG or IgA or IgE or, and the like. IgM is another one. So what happens is the immune system tags that food. And now every time you eat that food, you have an inflammatory response. And when that happens enough of the time, well, then this is what begins an autoimmune disease, because the body becomes so hyperactive and so sensitive, it can't differentiate between itself and an invader, and it starts attacking your own body. So this kind of scenario that I'm showing you here with the separation, this is what we coin leaky gut, okay? And then again, you guys know now, I've already shared this with you, but the immune system is in the gut. The gut is where 80% of the immune system is secreted. So this is why, this is why the gut plays such a huge role in influencing autoimmune disease. I'm just going to look really quick in the comments. Are any of you having any insights from this? Anything new or interesting? Lynn, you're fine. Don't worry about being late to the party. At least you're here. Okay. So yeah, food hangovers. Yeah, the symptoms are kind of unfortunately limitless. And that's why it is very limiting when you go to a conventional doctor, it's not to poo-poo them, but when you go to a conventional doctor and they've only got a few, they've got their set of symptoms, and those set of symptoms are categorized into a particular diagnosis or disease, and they live in those boxes. But that is not how the body works. So you and your friend could, be experiencing completely different sets of symptoms and both experiencing constipation, right? Or both you and a friend could be experiencing totally different sets of symptoms and both have celiac disease. It sounds like that might be the reason all of a sudden. Did you mean you can't eat foods that you love, Gayla? I hope I'm saying your name right. Yeah, it's typically what happens because usually we're eating the same foods over and over again. We're not typically great at cycling through foods. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because you've developed a food sensitivity and the immune system has been triggered. So there's leaky gut that's happening. And so now it's gotten to the point where you're having a very obvious response. Okay. So that's really the big kahuna of why the gut influences autoimmune disease. Now, the other aspect that what we have to realize is that the response is not just from food, it's also from pathogens. So some of the biggest players that influence autoimmune disease are the same players that break down the gut. It's just that when these players are around for long enough, irritate the gut and the immune system long enough, and then maybe you have a weak link in there, like maybe a genetic predisposition that wouldn't have been fired unless you did the certain things or were exposed to the certain things that you've been exposed to. Now it's activated. So some of those things are, again, a leaky gut, food sensitivities, medications. I was going to say pathogens are a big one. So pathogens, people always ask me what I mean by pathogens. So pathogens are parasites, worms, funguses, mold, viruses, bad bacteria, even bacterial, good bacterial imbalance. All of these play a huge role in the health of the gut. And 99.999% of my clients are walking around with pathogens. That's because everybody is walking around with pathogens. For those of you who are with me here now and even on the replay, let me know, did you realize that most of us are walking around with pathogens and that this can be usually one of the main culprits that is causing your chronic digestive conditions as well as your autoimmune disease? Let me know. Now, one of the elements that happens is, right? Yeah, exactly. Knowing is power, everybody. Knowing is power. It helps you make different decisions and choices and seek different things. Okay, so now if you have any of these factors, as well as other stressful factors, so heavy metals can play a role, mold and mycotoxins can play a role, pesticides, genetically modified organisms, all of these things will play a role in autoimmune disease, okay? But typically in autoimmune disease, how you'll hear it classified into more of a simple way to remember is that there's 3 legs of a stool when it comes to autoimmune disease. And it has to do with the gut, it has to do with genetic predisposition, and then the third one is that there has to be a stressor that tips you over the scale. So I was talking to one of our group members this morning, and she was sharing with me what's going on with her, what's going on with her gut. And then I asked her, I said, so since 2 years ago, did something happen around 2 years ago? And she goes, oh my goodness, my husband had esophageal cancer and we were moving from another country and he died just shortly before we were supposed to leave. And, all of the things that come along, like life is not easy for any of us, especially these days. Modern lifestyle is absolutely insane. And it brings on a whole slew of things that we have to deal with. Can anyone give me an amen on that one? In the comments, that life is pretty intense. And so it requires us to be more resilient, to be stronger, to be healthier in order to manage life stressors and life challenges. Yeah, amen. So, why I say this in regards to autoimmune disease in the gut is because there is also a hormonal connection, okay? So one of the things that happens with stress is that, we were originally created, right? And think of caveman, cavewoman times, is that we were created to respond to running from the tiger, right? That was our stress response. So we were standing there, we'd see a tiger, and we would run. Now, the moment that we saw the tiger, well, what happens? The brain recognizes that the tiger is something we should be afraid of because we want to survive, right? So that happens. And so the brain triggers adrenaline for a moment in the body until it has a few moments to then signal the adrenal gland in our body that sets off cortisol. And if you don't know what cortisol is our stress hormone, okay? And we need healthy amounts of it to keep us alive so that we can respond to things, but we also don't want too much of it because it is a catabolic hormone, meaning it breaks our bodies down when it is not exercised in right balance. So we run from the tiger, the brain then talks to the adrenal glands, pumps out cortisol. It pumps out cortisol for a period of time. Now, what happens in the body when cortisol is released? Our pupils dilate, our digestion shuts off, our uterus and our testes shut off or shrink, right? And our blood sugar increases. We're given basically like a hit of sugar in the body to give us energy so that we can run, so that we can act, so that we are alert for the moment to try to save our lives from the tiger. Now, in a healthy, balanced stress response, what happens is that then, hopefully we got away from the tiger and the cortisol is then, it needs to stop, right? So the brain has a healthy response. It talks to the adrenals. It says it's time to shut off that cortisol. So it does. And then your body goes back into what's called homeostasis or balance, right? Well, the problem is when you are constantly having these food sensitivities coming in, you've got a pathogen that's hanging out in you, you've got all these chemicals, you've got all the stress going on in your life. What happens? You have a chronic stress response, meaning that loop in your brain, it does not know how to tell cortisol to shut off. So now you're just streaming cortisol through your body 24/7 when you're sick for a long period of time, or, you've got a really go, stress lifestyle. And so, you've got cortisol streaming through you and it's breaking your body down. Yeah. So this becomes really problematic. And it's also one of the major influencers. Yeah, it's one of the major influencers in autoimmune disease, because not only is it the immune system that becomes taxed because it's been working on high for some time. So for some people, when I start working with them, I can see that their immune system in their gut is still fighting a good fight, meaning it hasn't been completely taxed where it's just kind of like shut down because it's been overworked. But there's other people that I do see that with. And the same thing goes for your stress response, because your immune system, has to activate these stress levels in your body because it's fighting something, right? And so what happens is that your cortisol levels are streaming through you for a long time. And maybe if, I'm working with you, I see that, yeah, you've got some serious high peaks in there. There is stress flaring in the body. We need to get this under wraps, or your stress response is completely dead because it's been working on overtime. Does that make sense for all of you that are here with me and on the replay? So the stress response also starts breaking the body down, because remember, cortisol is a catabolic hormone. It literally breaks the body down. The opposing hormone that actually builds our body up, and that's anti-aging, is DHEA. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, it's never one thing. We are a symphony and we are an orchestra. And so taking in really these two big factors is only two big factors, but there's lots of other things influencing it. But it gives you guys an overarching understanding of what's happening. Okay, so does anybody have any questions about any of this? So if something was unclear for those of you who are live or on the replay, go ahead, and I'm going to wait for a moment and let you guys get any questions in about anything that I've covered so far before I move on. You're always tired. Yeah. Oh, you're reminding me of something really important, Faye. Thank you. So the next major organ within that, gastrointestinal tract is the liver, and it's responsible for detoxification. Now, I know not all of you are struggling with hypothyroidism or thyroid dysfunction, and you're tired and don't sleep well. Yeah. It will get better. It will get better, but it won't get better by itself. You definitely have to do things differently, and it requires some specific support. I'll talk about that in a second. I'm sorry. I know it's terrible. I'm really praying that this group is going to make a change for all of you. And the more people that we can get better, then the more of a difference each of us can make in helping everyone understand how vital their health is and how we really need to be taking care of our health so that we don't get chronic digestive conditions or any illnesses. Okay, so the liver, let me get back to that real quick. And a lot of you are talking about sleep and being tired. So the liver, for those of you who are struggling with thyroid dysfunction, if you know you have it, and for a lot of you who don't know you have it. And the reason is because the liver is also responsible for thyroid hormone conversion. And if you're struggling with cholesterol issues, the liver does that as well. So, when we're talking about the gut and it becomes leaky and compromised, it starts compromising the liver as well. Then the liver isn't working well. It's not able to convert our hormones. And then we've got this stress umbrella going on. So typically what happens for people who have thyroid dysfunction is that the gut gets compromised first, then the adrenal glands. Remember, I was talking about the adrenal glands and how they produce cortisol, the stress hormone. And then the next place that's hit is the thyroid, because it's the temperature regulator, it's the body thermometer, it's the regulator of the hormone body. So this is kind of one example of how autoimmune disease kind of takes place and the role of the liver. Now, if you're always tired, that's definitely a signal to me that your cortisol levels have really tanked, and that your body has been under fire for quite some time. So you don't have any of that get up and go, because cortisol gives us that get up and go. It gives us the energy to go. That's why maybe for some of you, if you drink caffeine, if you're even able to drink any caffeine, that's why you get energy from it, is because caffeine increases cortisol artificially in the body. And that's why it's not beneficial to our hormones, but that's why a lot of people lean on it, is because their cortisol levels are out of balance. And when you're not sleeping well at night, it's partially because of several things. It can be because we're kind of going to Q&A, which I'm fine with. But if it feels like we're getting slightly off topic, we're just answering questions, but this does relate to autoimmune disease in the gut, is because of several factors. So one of those factors is that the liver is most active between 1 and 3 in the morning. So like I said, when the gut is compromised, it then will compromise that next major organ, which is the liver. And so what happens is the liver will wake you up during that time if your liver is compromised and it's overworked and it's trying to detox things it's not supposed to detox, like food particles, etc. Okay, pesticides, chemicals, lots of overburdening. And it's also the worry organ as far as its emotion is concerned. So if you've got worry, that'll also be waking you up at night during that time zone. Now, pathogens are also very active in the evening hours when you're asleep and your immune system is kind of, it's asleep, you're relaxed. So pathogens know that. They like to come out at night. It's kind of like the werewolf mode, and they come out at night. They're very sneaky. They're highly intelligent, and they start doing their thing where they're procreating, they're creating colonies, they're creating communication highways between different species of pathogens, and they're running amok. And that can be one of the reasons why you are waking up as well in the evening and not feeling rested. Blood sugar issues are another reason. So a lot of people think that they're eating healthy, and you may be eating whole foods, but not realizing that because of either your chronic stress that's been going on for so long and or the balance of ratios in your diet, you're actually creating a blood sugar imbalance storm. Yeah. So sleep can become an issue for all of that. Yeah. And regarding Faye, cocktails of meds for depression and anxiety for 30 plus years, we know how much there is a huge connection between the gut and the brain, right? And so we actually produce and secrete some of those neurotransmitters in our gut, actually, not all, but some, and they pass through via a massive highway, which is the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve travels from the gut to the brain. And so there is that big gut-brain axis, but it's not just from the gut to the brain. It can also be from the brain to the gut that can cause this, we're finding out. So lots of really great research that's coming out about that. And I'm sorry that you've been going through that. And it is possible to rebalance these things naturally. So that's the great news. So what can you do to turn this all around? You've got to get some good support. I am a big advocate of being educated, taking your health into your own hands, doing what you can. But if you've been on this road and you're going down the Google rabbit hole, or you're just trying to join groups to get information and figure out what to do, I hate to tell you, but it's going to be a hard road doing it that way. And it's just going to take you so much longer. And the reason I can tell you this is because that is what I did. And I could have saved myself years of heartache and money. I mean, I spent easily over $50,000 trying to resolve my gut issues. So I would rather prefer you to not have to go through that. And also the drain, it's not an easy road. So what I suggest for people to do, if you're struggling with autoimmune disease and you've got gut issues, which are obviously going to go hand in hand, is you need to work with someone like me. If you're not working with me, that's fine, but find somebody like me And not just anyone, you need to do due diligence, you need to ask questions, and all of that, because you need to get the right kind of testing. Oh yeah, that's why I had to write this down. I need to talk about lab testing that we were covering for a moment. And that's because conventional lab tests do not offer you the kind of resources and information you need. Number one, blood tests seem to be fine, but blood tests aren't going to get us typically the kind of answers we need when it comes to chronic digestive conditions. But they are great for looking at certain markers, but not everything. Hormones are best with urine and saliva, for example. Stool testing is not just all the same. There's different types of technology. There is, more high-tech technology that can really do better detection. There's different kinds of microscopes that are used, etc. So it all matters, because when you go to your conventional doc and you're having those tests run and they keep telling you it's normal, well, there's a couple reasons why. Number one is it's the quality of the test. And number two is that they're using lab reference ranges that are based on the homogeneous population, meaning everyone. And if you haven't noticed, almost everybody is sick now. And so what happens is the sicker that people get, the wider that these reference ranges become that the labs use. So then you go to your doctor and he's using those reference ranges and he's like, well, nothing's wrong with you. And you're going, look, I don't feel good. Something is not right. Can you all relate with this? Please let me know. And so that's one of the elements. So I use functional reference ranges, which are based on healthy people, because I want to help you move from where you are to healthy, right? And so I don't want to use reference ranges based on everybody because they're not healthy. So I utilize a different range that is tighter and it's based on functional and healthy people. Exactly. And using better technology. Look, I always say this. I don't know if any of you have heard me say this, but no lab test is perfect, but there's definitely better lab testing. And oftentimes what happens with conventional lab testing is that doctors are using what they're used to using, what insurance accepts, what, backdoor deals they have, etc. And I don't do that because I don't have that and I don't use that. So, and I have my finger on the pulse because I really want to see people overcome. And the proof is in the pudding. You can see results of my clients. And, I keep bringing in more of my clients that have had results to show you guys what is possible. And it's all just really mindset and misinformation that we need to change. And this is great that you are all here, whether you're live or on the replay and in the group, learning. You've got to learn that there is a different way to live and to be healthy. So what can you do to turn it around? Like I said, working with someone like me, I am a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. I run functional lab testing. I help you get the right answers, and I actually listen to you. And it's important that I listen to you because your story helps me to really be a good detective and investigate your story to the best of our ability. And then I can take that information, take the lab test, correlate it all, and put together a holistic and natural plan for you so you can overcome your chronic digestive condition and overcome your health issues. And I help support you. So I'm sure you're used to going to the doc or maybe even natural practitioners, naturopaths, and other functional practitioners, and they kind of give you a paper and a bunch of supplements, and then you leave, and then that's that. And you're kind of like, what am I doing? You're left floundering and you're not getting better. I mean, I am just really shocked and appalled, honestly, at some of the stories I hear from some of you that go to functional practitioners and, you just get a bunch of supplements and pay a bunch of money. And, you're not even knowing what you're doing, and you don't actually get over anything. And that is not right. It doesn't matter whether it's a conventional or a natural practitioner. Like, you need to be supported. And that's what I do as a health coach, is I support you through your process because you need it. Because health is not linear. It gets bumpy. Things change. Your body changes. Maybe it does good things. Maybe it does bad things. And you have to be able to figure it out in that time with somebody who knows what they're doing. So for those of you who have been watching the live streams, who are ready to overcome your chronic digestive conditions, you know, you're ready to take care of this and you're ready to invest in your health. Nothing else is going to matter to you but that. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my scheduling link in here for those of you who want to schedule a qualifying call with me and who are really serious about turning your health around and you want answers and you want help. Okay, so I am going to just take any other questions that may be coming here live for those of you who are with me here live. Again, those of you watching on the replay, I always welcome you to please drop your questions either here in the replay if it's relevant to this, or just make your own post or any other posts that come through the week. I am happy to answer them. So I'm just going to wait here a moment and I'm going to read through these comments. Yeah, Gayla, a couple of things that you said resonate for sure. You said you awaken in the wee hours every night, like a jerking awakening. That's your cortisol response. And that is a good signal that pathogens are running amok. Then you also said something about your gastrointestinal doctor just thinks you have anxiety. I'm sorry for that. That's really gaslighting you. Any questions? Drop them in, drop them in. And it doesn't have to be about this. It can be about anything that you're curious about. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, everything is new, right? I mean, Faye was saying it's all new, reaching out to learn, you know, new ways to eat. Yeah, for sure. And especially when you're struggling with, you know, a leaky gut, which pretty much, unfortunately, everybody has. Especially those of us who are experiencing chronic digestive conditions. It's difficult to know what to eat. And, you know, you guys should go back. Faye, there is a live stream that I did a couple of weeks ago, and it's all about food. And there is also a guide. I don't know if you received the guide, but if you haven't, you can go into that particular post and request it. And I'll send it to you, but it's all about how to optimize your food, because no one food diet works for every person. No diet works for every person. It's about, you know, figuring out what works for you specifically. Good, Lynn. I'm glad it was helpful. All right. Oh, let's see. Jackie, I cannot eat any fruit or vegetable without getting violently ill. Can you program help? Doctor has spoken, tells me this is in my mind. I was going to find me, which I can. Yeah, exactly. No, my program will help you, and your doctor is telling you it's on your mind because he doesn't know what else to do for you. Okay, this is out of his wheelhouse. All right. And yes, if you're eating any fruit or vegetables, do you know why this fruit or vegetables are causing you this violent illness? I just want to know if you know why, because I'll tell you. I just don't want to repeat myself if you already know. Okay. Yeah. So the reason is because plant-based foods, whether it is fruits, whether it's vegetables in particular. Yeah, vegetables in particular and grains. So whether that's nuts or seeds or brown rice or whatever, okay? They all have something that are called anti-nutrients. And anti-nutrients are basically what nature, God intended to put in these natural plant-based, well, we call them foods, right? These plants, because nature wants them to survive and thrive. And the reason is because these anti-nutrients create like a shell. So imagine like a seed, right? Like a pumpkin seed. There's a shell around it, right? And so when that seed is planted, it requires water and sunlight for it then to sprout and release the anti-nutrient. And the reason it has it there is to ward off pests and disease. Well, because if a pest goes and tries to eat that, like let's say it gets a bellyache or something, right? I haven't spoken to a pest to really know, but you know, that's essentially what happens. And so they got that message. We haven't gotten that message. And that's why I don't know if you've heard of soaking and sprouting like grains and seeds and nuts in particular, because it helps to release some of those anti-nutrients. But these anti-nutrients also exist in, like, for example, the brassica family. So kales, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage. This is one example of a family that have a lot of anti-nutrients. That's why, you know, they're really tough, if you will. And they can cause a lot of havoc. Now, this is not the only reason, but it kind of gives you a bird's eye view, because when you're consuming a lot of those foods, and that's why the plant-based diets definitely don't work for you, because you eat them and it just makes you so sick, is because you can't tolerate those and your gut has been so broken down. So yes, my program would work for you because I take all of those things into consideration. Jackie, does that make sense what I said? It's not the only factor, but it's part of the formula. I think it just takes a minute here on our internet to sync up. Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. That sounds good. Okay, y'all. Well, I'm gonna pop off here. And if you have any further questions, you're welcome to pop them here into the comments, or feel free to comment elsewhere in the group. I'll be happy to answer your questions. I'm wishing you all very well. I'm wishing you lots of discoveries, wishing you more steps to overcoming your chronic digestive conditions. And I appreciate all of you. Okay, I'll get my link in there, Gayla. And I appreciate all of you. And I'll see you next Tuesday here at 11 a.m. on the live stream. And until then, all right, ciao.